today with us we have Miriam Shaded, a
Hello.
former Polish politician, but still engaged in Polish politics.
Yeah, political activist.
Political activist, commentator,
Yes,
and much more.
and much more.
Well, you became publicly famous in Poland in 2015, really, when we had sorry, it wasn't even 2015, it was even earlier, I believe, when ISIS came on the stage in Iraq and Syria and started massacring their way through the region. And you took a great stance in trying to rescue some of the Christian communities that ISIS was threatening at that moment. And you started advocating for Poland to take some of them, to give them refuge. And if I remember correctly, a lot of people initially thought, well, this girl is in favor of migration, so let's invite her to our left-wing TV shows and so on. But then you started saying things about Islamic fundamentalism and radicalism that seems to have irritated some of these left-wing journalists, and they started being a little bit more careful when they invited you. Do I remember this story correctly, or it was the other way around?
It was a bit different, but at the beginning, for sure, I was always talking about persecuted Christians. So I guess all the TVs were for it at the beginning, and when my foundation helped actually to provided help for the persecuted Christians in a legal way. It was the first time in Europe. It was a precedent. Then I became much more known as well. It was like a snowball effect. And then the government changed and they tried to silence me. In 2015, although they won the election with the topic. Of course, they took all the ideas and migration with helping the persecuted Christians, but they, I guess, saw me as some kind of threat.
A rival.
I wasn't really controllable with what I'm saying, so they kind of tried to hush me down.
Yeah. And in those years, naturally, initially we had 2014, we had the war in Syria started in 2011, but ISIS came on the stage a little bit later. And by 2015, we had the European migration crisis with Angela Merkel saying welcome to everyone. And they started marching towards Northern Europe. Suddenly, a lot of countries started closing their borders. They couldn't take in so many migrants. But some people thought that after this, Europe will have learned a lesson and they will be much stronger against illegal mass immigration. But it seems like not much has happened. Have you seen any changes since 2015, or is Europe still very open to mass immigration?
I think Europe is still very open, but now they're slowly starting to see the consequences. Now I think slowly they're backing out. Now they have a huge problem. And there's going to be somebody who will have to deal with this problem. And I feel like I'm in the role to deal with this whole issue. Because I still have, my dad is Syrian, I still have Arabic blood in me. I'm half Polish, my dad is a pastor. I think I quite did a lot for Poland, especially in the migration topic. Poland didn't receive the illegal migration. We just did all the procedures in the legal way. That's why we still are safe, are still a safe country, and we can be proud of that. We don't have many attacks on the streets. We don't have a lot of rapes on the streets as well. And for sure, there isn't a huge threat from the Islamic side at the moment.
I'm guessing you have also a lot of Christian Syrian friends who live in other parts of Europe, in, I don't know, Scandinavia, England, maybe other parts. When you talk to them, do they say that they feel a threat from Islamist fundamentalists in their countries?
All the religions feel a threat from Islamists, unfortunately. Jews, Buddhism community, atheists, all of them feel a threat. and all of them came up to me and said that they support what I'm doing, because Islam is a very dangerous religion. It has over 169 verses calling for murder and for jihad. It's much more than you have in the other scriptures. And a believer, Muslim believer, is supposed to do that. And Christianity, we have it's different. We have
Old Testament, New Testament.
But Old Testament is based on 10 Commandments, and you can understand what Old Testament is all about. It's only 10 Commandments, and one of them is not to kill. Not the other way around. Okay. You're a Christian if you obey the 10 Commandments. I mean, you're a Jew if you obey the 10 Commandments. And then the New Testament is believing in God with all your heart and loving the other person as yourself. That's all that you can base on the Christianity and Jewish law.
And before that, before the Second World War, we had France that was a colonial power. Technically, they had a UN mandate to have some influence in Syria after the First World War. But before the First World War, parts of Syria at least were under the control of the Ottoman Empire, if I'm not mistaken. So here you had another Muslim state that was in charge of the Syrian area. How did the Christians live in the region before? So if we say 100 years before, 200 years before?
They were persecuted. They only survived because they can pay enough money.
The jizya.
Jizya, exactly. And for sure, last years before the war were much better for them. And they would say it out loud that at least we can survive, we can do our thing. The government actually trusted more Christians because they were much more faithful in what they were doing in jobs. The government would see that they wouldn't stab anybody in the back from the government. So in the Syrian constitution is that there should be a Muslim party, but this Alawi party wasn't really that religious, you can say, and that's why Christians survived till then. But then the war happened. I mean, they found out the biggest oil resources by Latakia, and then there was influence from other cities to countries to start a war in Syria. Unfortunately, it was the most liberal country in the Middle East.
Because this Alawite, some people call them Shia Muslims, others say that technically they're not Shia Muslims, but they seem to lean a little bit towards the Shia direction, while many of the rebels that rebelled against Assad, they belong to Sunni.
Yeah.
And in general, Sunni dominates most of the region. So the question is here, how would you describe the life of Christian Arabs in other countries as well, in Lebanon, in Iraq? How have the last 30, 40 or 50 years looked like for the Christian community in the wider Middle East?
In Lebanon, there was division. I mean, it was basically even better than in Syria with the government, because it was also Christians could be in power in some kind of way, and in Iraq it was also a big community of Christians and Kurds, and there was a lot of Christians, but after the war, of course, the persecution developed, and they had to run away. And as well, you can say that a lot of even communists or Christians, or they just try to help each other to make leaders. That was how my dad came actually to Poland, because there was this kind of system that they would send to Europe the most intelligent the people for scholarships, and so they can come back and then rule the nation, and in a less religious kind of way. So yeah.
Sometimes you see these statistics of how big the Christian Arab community was in a certain country, and if you look at the last 40, 50 years, the number has been dropping. Even before ISIS came onto the stage, it looks like many Arab Christians were moving to America, Canada, Europe, and today, at least in Iraq, for example, I believe there are very few left.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of the persecution, because of war, and and they, recently from my dad's church, the pastor was kidnapped
In Syria.
In Syria, yes, and there's a huge mission, but of course now Christians are not safe, and I guess you can see now with the war in Israel and Gaza as well. It's the same. It's I think we have war of other religions, normal religions against evil Islamic.
How when you see these marches in London, Berlin, Washington, where you have this alliance of migrants from the Muslim world, and at the same time you have young university students, usually with pink hair and nose rings, that seem to have very far left opinions.
Because the minorities try to keep with each other. They think that Muslims are a minority and migrants are some kind of minority, which they are evidently not anymore in Europe. And when I see those protesters,
the Queer for Palestine,
signs. It's like, I'm scrubbing my head. Actually, they have no idea what they're talking about. No idea. Recently I saw a video of Donald Trump saying how to deal with them, and that he's gonna fight them and take away their visas if they're supporting Palestinians at the moment. And I think that's a proper way to deal with this whole issue, because they are not here for a peaceful building of Europe. They're here for destroying or taking jizya. And actually, even it's very interesting, because a lot of Muslims that are not believing Muslims anymore, or which have daughters and live in Europe, they would say, "Don't get them in here. Stay with your values. Do not let the Muslims," and that's why nobody else from the Arabic community or outside wants to help Hamas or people from Gaza, because they Muslims know who they are and what they're gonna do to their own people as well.